Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio. Well, I'm still hung up on the case of Lauren Agee. This is one that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and thankfully there are a lot of episodes that Sheila Wysocki has uploaded from her podcast Without Warning about the Lauren Agee case, which was, of course, a death from about 3 years ago from Hendersonville, Tennessee, when Lauren Agee attended an event known as Wakefest and then was found in the water face down, and her friends seem to have no explanation for what happened to her. And a lot of people are just like screaming the M word, saying this is a murder that has been overlooked by the police department. Like most things on this channel, we're not going to go through too much background information so we can discuss the theories. But what I would say is, after recording this, I'll put a link in the description to an episode of Sheila Wysocki's podcast, and the last 7 minutes of this segment give just an excellent summary of the Lauren Agee case about all the background information. The last time we were talking about Lauren Agee on this on this channel, we were going through two main theories. One of them came from one of the people leaving comments here, and another one came from the Without Warning podcast, and it was from Cassie Franks, the ex-girlfriend of Aaron Lilly. The first one we had was someone was saying that this is a case of a sexual advance gone wrong, and it led to some sort of event that was causing Lauren's death, and two guys, Aaron Lilly and Chris Stout, the men who were sleeping on at the campsite, covered up for either themselves or perhaps also for Hannah Palmer, the girl who would have been with them. There were two men, two women. We have Aaron Lilly and Chris Stout being the guys, and then Hannah Palmer and, of course, Lauren Agee herself being the women. But what really happened? And this is what Sheila Wysocki is trying to find out, and I found it somewhat difficult to discuss this on other things. Like when I was mentioning this in there's some, true crime pages on Facebook and such, and I would start asking questions, and people were just like not really wanting to discuss this one. They just wanted to be like, just listen to Sheila Wysocki's podcast. That's just what you need to do. And I have been, because I think it's an excellent resource for the Lauren Agee case. It's the absolute best thing there is out there. They've provided some kind of new insight. Well, first let's talk about the second theory that the first theory is that Chris Stout made an advance on Lauren while they were sleeping together in a hammock, and she fell out, and then she either got severely injured or was deceased, by maybe hit her head on something, and just they thought she was dead, so they brought her to the water. And the next theory was that, coming from Cassie Franks, Aaron Lilly's ex-girlfriend, that it was actually Hannah Palmer who initiated the conflict, and she was the one who got into some sort of altercation with Lauren, and then that led to some sort of physical act of violence, and then once again the guys covered it up. But what really happened? Well, after listening to another episode of Without Warning, we've learned some key details. There's a very famous photo of Lauren Agee and Chris Stout sitting together in a hammock, and a lot of people were suggesting that they were sleeping together, but Sheila Wysocki has revealed that there were at least 6 other places that Lauren could have slept, without Chris Stout. I mean, they had not only the tent, but they also had other hammocks that were on the cliff, and they use a different word for them, like inu or something that I'm not really too familiar with. But the thing is, what they're trying to say is that Lauren Agee didn't have to share anything with Chris Stout. And it's like, once again, we've talked about that, like, why on earth would you ever try to initiate something that way? Like, we also have Lauren Agee telling at least 5 people that she felt uncomfortable and she wanted to leave. She had some foresight into what was going on. We know that Aaron Lilly was sending flirtatious text messages to Lauren Agee, and we aren't sure if Hannah Palmer was aware of that prior to the Wakefest event. But what I really liked from this episode that I'll put into the description box as well, from Without Warning, was Sheila Wysocki mentioned that it is possible that she has determined the exact point where Lauren fell, and she does not believe that Lauren fell into the water. Now, what is this all about? Well, this is saying that Lauren did have a very big fall. However, if Lauren had fallen off the cliff by her own, by her own accord, by her own fault, then like they were expecting drastically different injuries. Like if she had been walking, in her intoxicated state and just fallen off the cliff, like she would have had more broken ribs, she would have had way more lacerations to her body. So it's like they're just saying the injuries are not consistent with something such as an accidental fall into the water. But then, if that's not the case, where did she fall and how did that happen? Well, Sheila has said that she believes she has found the place where Lauren Agee fell. But the thing is, that means for certainty, according to Sheila, that she did not end up in the water. Well, then somebody must have brought her there. And there are only two guys on this little island cliff campsite, whatever you'd like to call it, Aaron Lilly and Chris Stout. But then what is this more significant of? Because this is about eliminating theories, right? We want to eliminate something. We want to try and see if we can kind of rule out somebody as a suspect. One of the biggest things, though, that I would say is that I've always dealt with this case is Aaron Lilly is the ringleader. Everyone is in agreement with that. Aaron Lilly is somebody who is kind of calling all the shots, and it's a very gutsy move for him to tell Chris Stout in front of the police, just stick to the story. We also have another witness named LD, who is someone who is at odds with Aaron Lilly because of his friendship with Aaron's ex-girlfriend Cassie Franks. So this guy LD says that he heard Aaron Lilly say, whatever happens up here stays up here, or something like that, prior to the death of Lauren Agee. So it was almost just sort of like, that's kind of leaning toward the Cassie Franks theory that something happened between Aaron and Lauren, and then Hannah Palmer became the aggressor in the situation. If I recall correctly, Hannah Palmer and Cassie Franks also got into a physical altercation at the Fish Lips bar on the first night of Wakefest, and that actually caused Cassie Franks to leave for one day. She left for at least one night or 2 nights. I mean, I forget those exact things, but then she came back to give her best friend, a ride. But the point is, I mean, we already have, Cassie and Hannah getting into some sort of physical altercation. Sheila Wysocki called it a catfight. So that means we know that Hannah is somewhat prone to violence. And the way that Cassie Franks explained it was just sort of like Aaron, was a very flirtatious guy, and he was sort of a very manipulative individual, very controlling. So Hannah would have viewed Lauren as the person at fault for flirting with her boyfriend. I mean, that's not unheard of. That's not the craziest thing in the world. But the way we've just kind of played it out, it actually seems like maybe what Cassie is saying actually has a little bit of value, that this could have played out this way, that Aaron Lilly might have told Chris Stout to, like, hey, take a walk with Hannah Palmer for a minute, and then he would have initiated some sort of act on Lauren. He would have tried to have done something with Lauren Agee. I mean, we're talking about initiating sex or something like that. But of course, Hannah would have come back and discovered this, or just even saw them together in the tent or something like that, and she would have become physical. I try to keep an open mind with this case. I try to keep it like, I don't want to just start eliminating possibilities, because eliminating possibilities too fast. I didn't finish my sentence, excuse me. So I look at so many comments on this case, and they're just like, this was no accident, this was a murder. And in the beginning, I did entertain the possibility that Lauren could have fallen off the cliff at the point where she had done the cliff jump. Maybe like she had just walked out on her own at night and she fell off the cliff. Remember, her blood alcohol content was twice the legal limit. She would have landed in the water, but then she would have been able to survive the fall, and she was able to move into the water onto the point where she got to the second cove, and then like the weight of her injuries would have taken over. I looked at that possibility, and well, I can say, as I mentioned already, there's just this overwhelming reaction to that, where people are just like, no, absolutely not, no way, not in a million years. The overwhelming consensus from people who have been following this case is that this was indeed a murderer. This was indeed a murder. There are murderers involved and accomplices. What we really should say is that it really does seem like there were people that were bothering Lauren, and it was most likely Chris Stout and Aaron Lilly. We have suspicious behavior from both of the guys, and what I think more people are coming at is that Hannah Palmer is the accomplice in this one. That's why I was very surprised to hear that Cassie Franks said that she would have been the aggressor in this situation. So if we want to say that Sheila Wysocki has pinpointed the area where Lauren Agee would have fallen, remember, not landing in the water, she would have fallen to a certain point, and then the two guys, Aaron Lilly and Chris Stout, would have moved her body to the second cove where Lauren was found. Okay, so, I mean, that actually seems like there is a certain amount of validity to what Cassie Franks is talking about. Hannah Palmer and Lauren Agee get into some sort of physical altercation. Hannah Palmer gets very aggressive. She caused Lauren to fall intentionally or unintentionally, something like that. But one of the big things that I think really holds this case back is just that there wasn't a sexual assault kit performed immediately, and I think that that could really answer so many questions. Like, I think they kind of had this thing they were going back and forth with. Like, at first, the mainstream narrative was that Lauren Agee was on her period and she had a tampon inside. And then they were just like, well, we're not conducting a sexual assault kit because she has a tampon inside. It's not possible to have any sort of sexual intercourse like that. But then when Sheila Wysocki was doing her interview on the Lord and Arts channel, she stated very clearly that that wasn't actually true. That's not how it happened. But when I was just listening to a segment from Without Warning that I'll put into the comments, into the description box, she kind of reversed that and said, yes, that is true. The police did not conduct a sexual assault kit because Lauren was menstruating and had a tampon inside. The point is, if we had more information about that, or like if they had done that, then we probably would have had a very different ball game. Not to mention something such as, I mean, DNA perhaps. I mean, that's going to be kind of a stretch, but they would have known if she had been sexually assaulted, raped, whatever you'd like to say. And then that would be a very, very different picture. Because unwanted sexual advance, and then Lauren would have kind of resisted. Either they would have assaulted her, one of the guys would have assaulted her and done something that would have knocked her unconscious, or perhaps she tried to get away and then they pulled her back, and somehow, some way that their behavior would have caused Lauren to fall in this area that Sheila says that she's pinpointed the location. I'm gonna kind of go off on a bit of a tangent here. They've done the dummy tests on like the crime shows where they show Chris Yarchuk, the detective, and Sheila Wysocki rolling multiple dummies down the hill. One of them was kind of like looked like a bunch of belts that were just attached together, and I do mean that like kind of like those really strong industrial belts stuck together. And the other one actually looked like kind of a crash test dummy. And they rolled this thing down the hill over 100 times in different locations, and they said that the dummy never got into the water. Like if, you know, like they were just to roll it off the cliffside, it never lands in the water. But at the same time, it's like they talk about Lauren Agee attempting a cliff jump where she would have jumped into the water. And this is just one of those things that I flat out, maybe I'm missing something completely, but I was like, if she attempted a cliff jump, landed in the water, got the wind knocked out of her, well, what on earth is that? I mean, obviously she could fall and land in the water, and I mean, that's just one of those things that maybe I've missed something when it comes to this case, but I mean, I really wanted to just sort of be like, this case is something so simple. It's just people are overthinking this. It's just like Lauren was intoxicated. She fell off the cliff, landed in the water. She survived the fall and she was able to move a little bit before being overtaken by her injuries, and that's why she was found dead in the second cove. However, I'm almost just forced to completely eliminate that one because all the suspicious behavior around Aaron Lilly, him sending flirtatious messages to Lauren Agee, his girlfriend who has this problem with rage, not to mention like Lauren telling 5 people that she wanted to leave, and she was actually supposed to leave, but some people were waiting for her to show up, and then like she said she was going to go home with them, but she just never returned. So they waited and waited, and they were just like, oh, I guess she's not coming, so they left without her. But multiple people heard that Lauren Agee wanted to leave the campsite and did not want to be staying with Aaron Lilly and Chris Stout and Hannah Palmer. And it's like a lot of people kind of use that to center it on Chris Stout. They want to say that, oh, well, Aaron Lilly and Hannah Palmer are a couple. They're boyfriend and girlfriend. They are together. Okay, so Chris Stout would obviously be a single guy. He's going to try and pursue Lauren, and Lauren would have felt uncomfortable about that. That leads us to believe that kind of first theory that we talked about, that Lauren Agee was assaulted by Chris Stout, and something would have happened where either she would have been knocked unconscious, and I mean, what I think they're trying to say is that what I think Sheila's theory is that she hasn't revealed yet is Lauren was thrown off the cliff, but she didn't land in the water. Yeah, she actually didn't fall very far. Sheila insists, though, that Lauren did fall. Then the two guys would have carried her very gently down the cliff and dumped her in the second cove. I mean, like, that's what it seems like that Sheila is kind of going at, because they're really putting a lot of emphasis on the fact that Lauren did not really have the major injuries that would have been consistent with somebody just falling off a cliff accidentally. Or I mean, like if I recall, the cliff is 90 feet high on one side of its absolute height. I mean, that's gonna cause a lot of damage. I mean, like yes, yes, absolutely. They just don't believe that Lauren's injuries are inconsistent with even a fall of 35 feet on the other side. It's almost just like if she had fallen, we're talking about something very much smaller that would have produced much fewer amounts of injuries. But what led up to all that? I think almost all parties now are just kind of coming to the conclusion that there was some sort of either a sexual assault or attempted sexual assault that, just went wrong. And it's very possible that Hannah Palmer was the aggressor in the situation, the way that Cassie Franks has laid out for us. It's like only the 3 people who were there that night probably truly hold the answers. And Sheila Wysocki has mentioned that she has, interviewed them. She's obtained a lot of information from those 3 people, but not completely, like in terms of not revealing phone records. We apparently had Chris Stout making 6 phone calls to a single person after this happened, but we don't really know who that is yet because he won't reveal the phone records. But it's like, I mean, I'm sure that those people would just be trying to do whatever they have to do to reduce the amount of conflict that is going to be heading their way, guilty or not guilty. I mean, and any lawyer would probably advise them to do so. But when it comes to a case like this, it really seems like there was an assault. This was a crime that occurred that led to her death. So if you want to call that murder, I mean, I'd say it is. The lawyers would probably spin it into some sort of manslaughter, reckless endangerment, but you can call that a murder. And we really just see something here that the police acted much too quickly in closing the case. And one of the things that we're just still trying to weigh out is who caused Lauren to fall and what was the motivation behind that. And I think those are just the 2 biggest things that the online kind of internet sleuth community are trying to answer, because almost all parties are in agreement that there was an assault, there was a murder, and the 2 guys, Chris Stout and Aaron Lilly, moved Lauren's body from wherever she would have had that slight fall to the second cove where the body was found. All right, so what was the motivation for that, and who caused Lauren to fall, because that's really going to affect a lot of things legally. Was it Hannah Palmer assaulting Lauren, and that caused her to fall off a certain area of the cliff? Was she assaulted in Aaron Lilly's tent and then found unconscious and knocked unconscious, excuse me, and then the guys moved the body? I mean, a lot of people are really trying to look at that example now. Or is this just something where Chris Stout made an unwanted advance and he caused her to fall, or he assaulted her and then they tried to throw her off the cliff, that didn't work, so they carried the body gently down to the second cove? I'd say that any of those three scenarios are plausible. Any of those things seem to work out, and we're gonna keep examining some things. I mean, I think it's very good to just kind of also give some commentary on these things. Like someone was asking me, like the motivation for talking about Lauren Agee. Well, this channel is just this is a commentary channel where it's just kind of giving some responses to some of the art things that are already out there. It's definitely, like just kind of giving a response and like, what do you think about this? That's just kind of what we've been doing with some of these things. And I think Sheila Wysocki, of course, will solve the case way before I will. But at the same time, we just want to examine things and be like, hey, wait a second, do these two things make sense? And yes, right now, I would say that the accidental death theory is going to be taken off the table, and we really are just looking at a homicide. But the question still we have to answer is which one of those three was the aggressor, and what was the motivation for staging the scene. All right, well, that's all from me now. A little bit jumbled and rambling during the early parts of this podcast segment, but thank you to anyone who has listened this far in. And if you have anything to say at all about the case of Lauren Agee, and you have just anything you'd like to share, and just maybe we can expand the discussion and have a little bit more conversation about what happened at Wakefest years ago.